Hello guys, welcome back to Pause and welcome back to Hysteria Pier. This is part 12 of our ongoing Vintage Pack DLC Planet Coaster build of a pier and promenade. So if this is the kind of content you are into, theme parks, simulation games, that kind of stuff, so consider subscribing to the channel to stay up to date with all of our content, and don't forget to give the video a big like if this is the sort of stuff you are into. So, moving on to today's episode. So we get a few little bits done. First of all, as you can see just here, I'm adding a new trampoline and activity park to the promenade. So I had this little bit of space that was there. And ages ago I asked people what they thought I should put in. Quite a lot of people wanted a flower bed, like a little flower garden. I am going to do that in the other available space. But this one, sort of between the Ferris wheel and the golf, I thought it really could do with more of a attraction. So that's why I've put one of these in. They're quite common for promenades and beaches and that sort of thing, so that's what we've put in. It is a blueprint, this one, from the workshop. It is by Mineral Junction, so many thank you to you for making this, and quite a few people have been using this recently as well. It's a really good asset. Yeah, it is on the workshop if you would like to use this in your parks as well. I do a little bit of tweaking with it, only slightly, a little bit of fencing, move a few bits around, and I think we end up calling it Beach Bounce or something tacky in the end. You know, the usual crap. So yeah, that's how we do it. It's not obviously usable, it is just theming, but it fills the gap and it fits quite well in this little space. So that's the first thing we've done. We're near enough there now with the promenade. There's going to be odd little bits here and there that I need to touch up towards the end of the build, just making it look a little bit better, and I will add a few more things around the prom just to get the guests actually using it, because since we've had the rise on the pier, it's looking a little bit empty, so not as many people are walking up and down. So that's something we will do before I get this finished and up on the old workshop itself. So a few other bits and pieces. I put a few vending machines just randomly down here, again just so people will come over here and use them, and just again, it's quite common, you will find these relatively everywhere in these kind of places. Vending machines and arcade games, that sort of thing, they really are just everywhere. So that's what we've done. We jump back onto the pier to do a few little bits, lighting, fences and stuff like that, mainly just a few little touch-ups, and I think, if I remember, do a little bit of work with the pathing as well, just to sort that out a bit. But it's generally just a little touch-up episode, this one, and then towards the end, as always, I'm doing a little bit more work on the ghost train. That seems to be the common theme at the moment. That's where I'm going with this, is pier stuff, and then yeah, ghost train towards the end. So that's what we are doing. One person did ask in the comments what a ghost train is. So I don't know if that, I thought it was quite a common term, but I guess not. So a ghost train is like your haunted dark ride style attraction, for anybody who is unsure what a ghost train is. I think the term ghost train was actually coined by Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I believe that was the original and the first ever one. But to put it in a perspective of what they are, think Haunted Mansion at Disney, that style ride, just on a lot less budget, is what we're going for. So yeah, we'll do a bit more work on that towards the end of today's video. Now here is getting started on the little bar type, grill type building towards the back of the pier. This is still a work in progress, so the end product isn't how it's going to look. It's not complete. I just want to get the shell in and get the area usable. At first I did toy with the idea of making it a weird shape. I get rid of that quite soon, because I was playing around with a few shapes to see what worked, see what didn't, and yeah, it didn't work very well. And again, you don't get these kind of shapes on piers, so I went back to just a regular building. I need to add a lot more detail to it, because it's currently it looks okay, but it's very lacking. So I will go back. We'll make this a little bit better as we get on this build. The other thing I do as well is I build a tiny little outcrop to the side of the pier at the back here, where there is a seating area, or will become a seating area, I should say. So you basically got this lovely pier, and then towards the back of it, stretching up towards where the coaster supports are, you can see them at the back. There's going to be a lovely little outdoor seating area. loads of benches, tables, chairs, that sort of thing. So you can come on the pier, grab yourself a pint of beer or whatever you want, a Smirnoff Ice, I don't know, whatever you have in America, a Bud, I don't know, and then just sit out there and look at the ocean. So that's the plan. Most piers I've been to have a bar or an arcade or some kind of cafe or something at the bottom, at the end of them. So that's what we're doing. I was trying a few different things with roofs, as you can see there. I was just having a play around to see what would work. In the end, I settled on this roof and changed the colour just a little bit to make it match. And it turns out okay. It's a bit boxy, so I'm not so happy with the boxiness of it, but it kind of works. It works for what it would be at the pier. And I did check up a few reference images of things, and the materials aren't strictly what would be there, but it fits. Like I mentioned last time, it's a fantasy game, so I'm not trying to make this as realistic as possible. Just as long as it is realistic enough for it to not look that stupid in that place, then that's what I'm going for. There's a few times I've touched on in this series. I'm trying to add little modern touches to certain buildings in this pier, as that's what you generally do get in UK piers. So this is an example of that. Is originally this will be quite an old building that at some point they've decided, let's rip out the door and put in a more modern front. So that's why I've gone for sort of this glass piece across the top, and then these more modern doors / windows, which would open out as like a patio door type thing. So that's the reason why I've done that, if you're wondering why that looks a bit out there. And that is, again, what these piers would do. And I've seen it firsthand, that there might be an old building that they've modernised at some point, but keeping the actual structure of it pretty much intact. So that's the reason why there's that bit of stark contrast between the door and the build. And I've tried to get a few bits like that in this, just to give the impression that the building's been there years, but at some point they've decided, let's tart it up a bit. Now these little pieces here, these gold ones, they don't stay, but I was really intrigued by them because I didn't realise that depending where you put them, the corners make like a higher piece, like a cap on the edge, which I didn't even know existed. Never used them pieces before, so I might have to find a place for those in maybe Hysteria Valley, possibly. So they were really good pieces. Anyway, so back to this. I'm just trying to put a few details in to see what works, what doesn't work. Like I mentioned, it's very much a work in progress. So we will come back to this and just make it look a bit better. But for now, it's usable. We put in some shops. We put in some, I think 3 drink shops go inside it. Obviously, we don't have an alcoholic beverage stall in the game yet. Hopefully one day Frontier will put in like an actual bar or something, which would be pretty nice. But for now, we don't have it. So we just put in some of the in-game drink stands, drink stores, and the seating goes in. I like this at large. Again, it's like it kind of fits that pier vibe, and it has them pier colours. Whether it would be there, I don't know. I quite liked it, so it's staying because I liked it. Pier End, I thought could be a decent enough name for a pub. That's what I'm going for, is a British pub, so bar for those in the US, but I'm sure you know what pubs are. The Pier End Bar and Grill, so that's the modernisation side of things. So maybe they serve like a few burgers, fries and ribs, that's the usual stuff that's come over from the States. And obviously your lovely beverages. Again, to sort of jank it up a bit, I wanted to find something quite garish to put on the top. And again, looking at quite a few reference images of British piers, for distance, so from off the pier or maybe on a boat or just walking up and down the actual pier itself, you will generally find a lot of these kind of massive glaring lettering signs that are just screaming at you: bar, arcade, fun, rise. The really sort of tacky signage and lettering, which you will find, and trust me, do a quick Google search for UK piers, you will see a lot of that crappy signage. So that's the reason why I've put a few of those in certain areas here. Yes, it doesn't suit the pier, it doesn't suit the building, that's the point. I did the same thing with the ticket booths back in the day, very vintage from the front, really tacky signage on the back. Sadly, that is how these things work. UK piers are nasty little places. They're fun. I mean, they're nasty in terms of they're janky. So yeah, that's the reason for the signage. Here I've said in the expansion to the pier flooring to add a lot of these benches and tables and things. I didn't want it looking too neat, as again this is a kind of neglected backside of the pier. It'll be a bit rubbish. There'll be bins on there'll be rubbish on the floor, garbage on the floor, and just it won't look very nice. And that's what we've gone for. Like I said, put in a few of the drink shops. People do come up and do start using it, and they do actually start using the benches as well, which is pretty good. It means it's not been a complete waste of time putting this in. So that's always a bonus. A slight bit of flooring. I might do an interior in that building, just very basic stuff at some point when I come back to it. But I don't get that done in this episode. But yeah, just little things, like maybe I'll put some tables and chairs against the edge, some shelves, maybe some odd props on the walls, just to make it look a little bit more pub-like. But yeah, that's just generally what we've done today. Now here I wanted to rise up the balloon a little bit, as I wanted it to have a bit of a higher sight line. And so I've just jumped it up a little bit higher. It's still static, we've just expanded up the pipe, or whatever it's called, the cable. So yeah, it looks a lot better. Here I've put in another ticket booth just at the back end of the pier, as now there are 3 on the pier, on the ride section of the pier beyond the arcade, and sort of the 2 main ticket booths at the entrance to the pier now. So I think there's enough ticket places and options now. As we've expanded it, it made sense to add some extra ticket booths. So yeah, just having a little look from different angles to check the sight lines and make sure things look alright. I'm getting quite happy with it now. I think there was a couple of episodes where I was looking at it thinking, this is awful, this doesn't look anything like a pier. And now we've started putting in the little bits and pieces, the lighting, the fences, the bins, the buildings really help to sort of tart it up. So yeah, that's what we've done to make it look a little bit more pier-like, and I think it does look quite good. Here we're doing a complete lighting pass. I use a lot of the brand new vintage lampposts, both of them in fact we use on the pier. The little ones are kind of the fence and pathway edging kind of lights, and I think they work really well. And then I use some of the taller street lamps down the centre and around the seating areas, just to give it a little bit of variation, and again to change the height a little bit. As I don't, when we get down into Teddycam and sort of a peep perspective on this park, I want there to be some height variance and make it just look a little bit better from below. Sight lines is something that I need to really work on, and I know it's hard to do that on a flat pier, but that's why it's more important to get the different levels of height with the buildings, the rides, and the theming and that sort of thing. So that's what I've started to think about as we get towards the end of this build. To be honest, and that we are actually getting towards the end. Obviously, originally I was planning to have this like a 5 to 10 episode build, and this is episode 12 now that we're on here. So it's got a bit higher than I anticipated, but I think maybe by 15. I don't want to put an exact number on it, but I could probably see by part 15 this will be pretty much complete. So all in all, what we've got left to do is finish up the areas that we've done. So I need to come back to pretty much everywhere and just touch it up ever so slightly to make sure everywhere looks like a pier. I need to finish off the fencing and put a load of fencing around the edge of all of the pier to make it safe, as I don't want there to be any areas where kids or whatever might jump in, because we need to make it realistic. And piers pretty much have metal fencing the entire perimeter of them, so that's something we will do at some point, probably off camera, so that's going to be tedious as tits, but I will do it. Again, more little lighting. I will go back and change the outside of the ghost train, the spooky manor. I'm not happy with the sign, I'm not happy with the lights, so towards the end of that build we will redo the outdoors and make it look a bit better. Here just adding some spots and sort of theme feature lighting around the pier, as again this is what you would get walking down the promenade sort of at dusk and night time. they will light up most of the rides and buildings on piers to get your attention, so you see it from a distance and it draws your eye and draws you onto the pier. That is how these things generally work. So that's it for the lighting pass. It looks a load better now actually in the dark, and we will do a complete walkthrough with this pier at some point over the next couple of days in Teddycam, just so you can see what's been done, because there's been so many changes since the last sort of detailed look video. So we'll do one of them in a few days, so you can just see it from Pete's perspective, and I can just explain a bit more what I'm going for. So here we're jumping back into the ghost train. We do a couple more scenes. We've put in quite a lot of triggers today actually. So this one's a bit sped up a bit faster than normal, because I don't want a time lapse of doing triggers is tedious. So you'll see. I'll talk you roughly through my ideas here. So as I mentioned a few times, I want this to be quite a janky ghost train. A lot of cheap jump scares, things popping out at you, faces appearing on the wall, lights coming on, loud noises, really crappy scares, which is what this ghost train would have, and they do have. So we're adding a few animatronics. Again, would you have them in this kind of ghost train? Probably not, but imagine they're really tacky. Like, I'm talking like probably them wings are probably being hung up by bits of string and a really primitive motor that's moving them. So just because it looks better themed in the game, it doesn't mean my thought process behind it isn't janky, if that makes sense. So we're using the standard mist and to block as much view as we can on the approach to these things, and then pinpointing certain scares using either strobes or coloured lights, which is what you can see just here. And because I've got the 3 car in a row thing on this bloody ride, I'm just trying to make it so at least all 3 will get some kind of scare in each scene, as it's not the easiest thing to work with. This next bit, I just thought instead of putting another wall in, I'll make my own kind of janky wall. And this was something I can't remember whose video I saw it in. It might have been Mass Bandit, I can't remember, so sorry to whoever it was. But they did this really awesome pier ghost train a few weeks ago, and they use a lot of this style wall to break up the scenes, and they did this really cool thing with these lights where they made them look like eyes. So I have a quick go at that. It's not the darkest of scenes, so the effect doesn't work as well as I'd hoped, but I think it still works quite well. It's really subtle, but I think it works. So just to give the impression that these eyes are looking through the wall at you. So yeah, I believe it was Mass Bandit. If I'm getting that wrong, I'm so sorry. But whoever it was a brilliant little idea, and it works really well. So we had a couple of those in here along with this sort of janky wall, which is pretty realistic actually. It's thrown together bits of wood or fake wood or whatever just to break up the scene, and like I say, I think that generally would be quite realistic in this kind of ride, so that's what we go for. It works quite well. It goes really fast down this section, so there's not much you can do in this first couple of corners, because the downhill, even if you put a chain lift on, which I have done, it doesn't slow down the hoax, which is a shame, because most of these ghost trains are on different heights. You would have a chain lift down, so to get you back down to the lower level slowly. Unfortunately, I can't do that in the hoax, so we have to just live with it. So we have some really quick jump scares in this scene. 2 of them that pop out the grave just there on the floor. Again, they wouldn't be as themed in real life, but they're pretty decent. We can get away with them. Here I'm just finding some reference images on the old Google, which is why there's a bit of a pause. I'm just doing some face jump scares. So imagine if in a real ghost train this would probably have originally been UV paint on the wall where they've painted a face. I'm using the billboards and lights in my version, which is what you can see here. We're uplighting from below, triggering them as you go past, and it gives quite a good effect. Like I said, in a real ghost train, you probably would have this as UV painting on a wall as you go through. UV light will come on, a screech will happen, and it works as a nice, effective jump scare. This is my equivalent, using the pieces we've got in the game, as I keep mentioning, and covering up the lights as much as I can using the gravestones or just other random props. And I want to add a little bit of realism to it, and that's what we do. 2 more face jump scares here, using a clown and another random face I found on Google. So just random images. Hopefully no one will sue me for using these, but I'm sure we'll be fine. And then I go back through the scenes we've done, add some speakers, and trigger those as well with the jump scares. So there's a nice little screech or piano noise or just something, all currently in-game sound effects in this ride. The only non-in-game stuff so far in this entire build that we've done are just the odd few billboards. There's not going to be many. There's not many at all, really. And most of the ones in this ride are just static. Well, they're all static, and just old random photos and stuff that I found online. So nothing too spectacular. So yeah, we are sort of nearing to the end of today's video, guys. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you can see the kind of angle that I'm going for with this build. And it's coming together. Like I say, we are nearing the end of our pier and promenade build. It's been a long ride, it's been emotional, it's been longer than I anticipated it to go on to, but that's it. So that's it for today's episode, guys. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers, guys. Bye.